What's going on, guys? Ben Schneider here once again. I said I'd put this racing show of mine on hold until I thought the time was right, until something major happened, and I think the time is right now. There's been a lot of good stuff that has happened in NASCAR the last 2 to 3 days, a lot of heartwarming stuff, but also a lot of infuriating stuff, and I want to set the record straight here for people who maybe don't follow the sport, have only heard about the story in passing, don't have the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, because I think that's very important here. So on Sunday evening, after what would have been Cup Series race at Talladega was rain delayed, NASCAR released a statement saying that a team member from Richard Petty Motorsports had been made aware and brought to NASCAR evidence that a noose was hanging in the garage stall of Bubba Wallace, NASCAR's only full-time black driver in the Cup Series. And understandably, there was outrage, disgust, and a whole host of reactions from all sorts of people all across the media, on social media, within the sport, outside of the sport. And on Monday, the next day, Wallace's car owner, Richard Petty, came to the track to show support as everybody in the sport rallied around Bubba Wallace during the pre-race ceremonies in what I thought, and what I still believe, was an incredible display of solidarity and unity towards Bubba. Fast forward to last night, the FBI had been called in to investigate. They concluded their investigation. We find out all along it was a garage door pull, a rope, that had been tied into the shape of what could, I think, well be confused for a noose. You look at the pictures, I can see why this misunderstanding got out of hand as it did. But I want to set the record straight on a couple of things here, because I've seen people in the media take this and run with it on both sides, and my outrage right now is really towards a lot of people on both sides, but it's really centered on independent conservative pundits and outlets right now that have for a long time based themselves on investigating the truth, and the mainstream media says one thing, but let's wait until we have all the facts before we judge, and you're clearly not doing that here. I can't tell you how many people, verified checkmark Twitter accounts and news organizations I've seen that are peddling this Bubba Smollett narrative. Let me make one thing very, very clear here. Bubba Wallace is not Jussie Smollett. It is insulting that anyone would dare make that comparison here. Absolutely insulting. Bubba Wallace never saw the noose, or garage door rope, or whatever you want to call it. He never saw it. He reacted just as all of us did to the statement NASCAR put out. And try putting yourself in his shoes. He reacted just as any of us did, any of us would have in that situation. This is not a hoax. This is a misunderstanding. This is not something that was done to gain attention, to make people feel sympathetic for Bubba. This was a misunderstanding. And it's an awful misunderstanding, and it's going to be a PR nightmare for NASCAR and the media to try to sort out. But do not drag Bubba Wallace down in all of this. Bubba had no part in fabricating this story. Bubba is a victim here, make no mistake about it, despite what people may tell you. He is a victim in all of this. Even more so, perhaps now, than he was 24 hours ago. Because now all the Bubba Smollett memes are circling around social media. That hashtag is trending. And it pisses me off. It pisses me off that people would go there and make that comparison, because this is a completely different scenario. It's completely different. And like I said, it's insulting to Bubba and his integrity that people would go there and think that he had any part in setting this up. But I also want to address something that I think is a lesson that we all need to take away from this, and we all need to really think about going forward. And some of us still aren't doing it, like I just mentioned, with this whole Bubba Smollett thing. We need to make sure that when a story as serious as this, that has as many potential repercussions as this, before we go to print, before we rush to judgment, before we make these declarations, we need to make sure we have the whole story. We need to make sure we know what we're talking about. Because the implications of all this are very, very real. Racial relations in this country are as tense as they've been in decades right now. This is a serious issue. And it's vital that when something like this happens, that we have all the facts and that we get this right. NASCAR rushed to put a statement out. And I don't envy their position in all this. I really don't. It's tough. But they could have handled this a lot better. Make no mistake about it. They could have handled this a whole lot better than they did. And I'm sympathetic to the media because their job is to report. They received a statement from NASCAR and they reported on it. And because of this pandemic, access is limited right now. And it's difficult to ask questions to make sure you have all the details, and it's even more difficult to get an answer even if you can ask the question. But that being said, there is a lesson in all this that we need to learn. You have to get it right. When a story that is this serious breaks, there is always this rush to get it out quickly, to be first. And it comes at the expense, a lot of times, of being right. I said the same thing 5 months ago when Kobe Bryant was killed in his helicopter crash. Major news. Tragic news. But what happened? TMZ breaks the story and says Kobe Bryant and 4 others killed. ABC breaks the story and says Kobe Bryant and his 4 daughters on the plane with him killed. Some other outlet says Kobe Bryant survived by his wife and 4 daughters, and we find out that none of those were true because it was Kobe Bryant and 8 others who were killed, one of which was his 1 daughter. When serious news with serious implications breaks, you have to get it right. You have to make sure you have everything right. I want to be clear, I don't believe this was a hoax. I don't think hoax is the right word. I don't believe this story was fabricated at all. I think this was, at the end of the day, an awful, awful misunderstanding. I think people got carried away. People let their emotions get the better of them. People didn't ask the questions that they needed to. Perhaps they didn't think logically as much as they could or should have. But don't call this a hoax. Don't call Bubba Wallace Jussie Smollett. Call this a misunderstanding, because that's what it is. And like I said, I would not want to be NASCAR right now. because this is disastrous. This is a PR nightmare that they're going to have to try to sort out. I'm relieved that there was no hate crime or threat directed towards Bubba Wallace, and I still believe a lot of good came out of Monday afternoon at Talladega Superspeedway. I am proud of our drivers. I'm proud of our teams. I'm proud of our sport for rallying around Bubba, for showing him support, for coming along by his side. I'm extremely proud of that. And I hope that throughout all of this, while there is a mess that needs to be sorted out, while there are a lot of lessons that need to be learned, and perhaps relearned that we may have forgotten, my hope is that that is not lost. The progress that NASCAR has made, the steps they've taken in the last month to create a more diverse, inclusive environment in our sport, that is my hope. That we do not lose that we do not lose sight of the progress we've made and must continue to make. But that being said, I want to make sure we also remember this situation and how out of hand it got, how massive of a misunderstanding this was, because this cannot happen again. People who don't know our sport, people who don't have the full story, are at this very moment, right now, still running with it, jumping to conclusions, making assumptions. We can't have that. I'm concerned for the fallout over the next few days and what that's going to look like. But for now, let's all please try to remember that. Let's take this situation and let's use it as a learning experience to seek the truth above all else. Hope you all are doing well, staying safe. I'll talk to you all soon. Have a good day, everyone.